South Waves Theatre.
Right, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by comedian Suzi Ruffell, who is flying high after her Keeping It Classy tour last year, and she is back with a new tour called Nocturnal, and she'll tell us about that in a minute. But for those who won't be familiar or aren't familiar with your comedy, how would you describe it?
Hello, I would say I do observational storytelling, but with, I guess, some of the stories are a little bit quirky. I'm a bit of a confessional comic. I always think I basically tell everybody everything on stage. I've always done that, but I'd say, yeah, on the whole, everything comes from truth. They're sort of, I've described them before as like story jokes. Everything, is very much sort of observational but honest storytelling, which is a very long answer for it's just an hour of jokes and stories about my life. That's
a very popular thing these days. There are a lot of story comedians, and you're one of those. Obviously, last year I've spoken to you before. For those people who are thinking, "Wow, this person sounds familiar." Last year you did your Keeping It Classy tour, and this year you're doing your Nocturnal tour. What is the kind of difference? What have you taken from that experience, and how have you put it into this new tour that you're doing?
So Keeping It Classy was like my first UK tour. I've done a few Edinburghs now, and that was the first one where I went sort of around the country by myself. Previous to that, I'd been around the country with Tom Allen. We did a double-header tour where we both did our own solo shows. And then I've toured the country with Alan Carr, Josh Widdicombe, Ramesh Ranganathan. And last year was the first year that I sort of did my own tour. So it was, that was sort of the benchmark. It went really, really well. And I was really thrilled with the reception that the show got. And then I was sort of umming and ahhing about going back out on the road. And then I enjoyed it so much that I wrote a new show, took it to the Edinburgh Festival. And here we are now in the spring leg of the tour. This year's show, it's called Nocturnal because it's about, I think a lot of people might assume that being a comic, you're sort of up, out every night, drinking, dancing, hanging out in the back rooms of comedy clubs, when in fact I'm nocturnal because I wake up at 3 a.m. most nights worrying about the state of the world. And that was sort of the jump off point for the show this year. So it's about all my different anxieties, some of them being ridiculous, hilarious, silly, some of them being things that people go, oh God, yeah, I think like that as well. That's something I worry about. And yeah, I guess that's what the show's about. And it's sort of grown. I took it up to the Edinburgh Festival. It grew there. It became every night sort of the material changed a little bit, or I added new gags in, or something that had happened in the news. I thought, oh God, that really links to the show. I want to keep it topical and keep it current. And here we are now.
Well, it's certainly, as we were saying before this interview, it's certainly been a long journey. A year can feel like a long time, and of course, as you say, you took it to the Edinburgh Festival. How different do you think it is to the show that you did there?
I'd say it's grown a bit. I mean, the thing about Edinburgh, to be completely honest, I like going to the festival. I always enjoy it, but tour shows are always a bit more fun, usually because the audience, in Edinburgh, the audience will have seen 3 or 4 shows that day, whereas when you're on tour, you'll be maybe the only comedy show they see all week, maybe all month, maybe, the first one they've seen in the last 6 months. So it does it changes sort of the energy of the room, that everyone's sort of quite excited, and it's something different. I would say with regards to material changing, I guess it always changes a little bit by the room that you're in, by the people that you're with, by the people that have come to support the show. Because, I might get chatting to someone in the audience, or, you think, oh, this audience are a bit rowdy, I need to be a bit bigger, or these guys are a bit quiet, I'm going to take it in a little bit more, maybe start the show in a slightly different place. So I guess it always changes, and that's how I keep it interesting for myself. I did the show 28 times at the festival, and now the tour, and then I'd done it, maybe 20 times before the festival in preview season. And now on the tour, I'll do the show about another 30 times. So I need to keep it interesting to myself. And so I always sort of like to change it up, or to stay loose within the stand-up.
Well, as you said earlier in the interview, you are always finding new things to kind of worry about and obsess about. So therefore, you're always kind of finding new material. How do you choose what to include and what not to include?
Well, generally, it's what gets the biggest laugh. You always keep including stuff that you're like, well, that always works. That's always a really fun bit to perform. I'll throw that in. I don't enjoy that bit so much anymore, or that bit doesn't feel relevant to me. But generally, I'll keep it's not necessarily throwing in whole routines. It's throwing in little asides or little moments or chatting to an audience member to get you into a bit. It's I guess it's just about keeping it loose and keeping it feeling. It's really important when you're touring or when you've done a show a number of times that it still feels really exciting for you to perform. And I guess that's the thing for me, is that every show I want to bring my A game and give absolutely 100%, and I want everyone to have a brilliant night. And I know, what a commitment it is when people come out to see a show. Maybe they've got kids, they might have to get a babysitter, they might have gone out for dinner. It might end up being sort of an expensive night out. And I really want people to have a brilliant night. It's really important to me that they go away going, oh, I'm really pleased you went to that. And so part of that is about keeping the show, making the show still feel vibrant and exciting, and it's still exciting for me to perform. So that's where I'll change little bits. I'll be like, I never want to think, oh, I don't like this routine anymore. I'll always just change it because I want people to have a brilliant time. And I think that audiences can tell when a comic's not enjoying it or when they're not selling it. And it's really important to me that, that people have a great time.
Well, I'm sure they will. And part of the reason we're doing this interview today, ladies and gentlemen, is that she is coming to the Brighton Komedia on Monday, the 18th of March this year. And you've been here, I should think, many, many times. What do you make of it as a venue?
Oh, it's fabulous. It's brilliant. There's a comedy club that runs there. It's fantastic at the weekends. But for a tour show, it's particularly good. I think audiences are particularly good in Brighton. I think a lot of audiences go to comedy and understand comedy. I was at the Brighton Dome just this weekend gone on Saturday night, and the audience was so fabulous just because they know comedy and they're into it and they're up for it. And you find that, I've always found that with tour shows in Brighton. So it is one of the ones, in my agent system. So you'll go back to Brighton and it's always, 100%. Yeah, it's always a great place to do stand-up and a nice place to be.
Well, and there are so many, as you said, there's so much comedy and it's quite a vibrant place as well. Normally what I would ask is, are you going all over the country or is there just a select few? And also, is Portsmouth on the list anywhere?
My hometown. I'm doing Salem, which is just outside of Portsmouth. And then I'm doing a sort of special for Radio 4, which is a version of the show, but slightly different, that I'm also recording in Portsmouth. So I've got two shows in Portsmouth. And then, I'm sort of going all over the place. I've got quite a few gigs up north. Oh, if you can hear that, that's my cat in the background. Sorry about that. She's doing my PR today. I've got, quite a few up north, loads in the Midlands, one in Devon. I try and sort of cover different parts of the country. You always get people say, well, you're not coming to this specific village. But you try and sort of fit in as many as you can and as many as there's demand for. And, what I've learned over the last year of sort of doing a bit more telly and doing quite a lot of radio and being a bit more on people's radar, every year the tour is growing, which is the most exciting thing. So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, I am visiting a lot of different places across the country.
That's great. And if people were unsure, I always ask this, if people were unsure about coming to see you, what would you say to them?
Oh, I would say give it a while. The ticket's pretty cheap. There's lots of me on YouTube. I did Live at the Apollo this year and Mock the Week, or last year rather. Mock the Week, Stand Up Central, live from the Comedy Store. I've got my own special on iPlayer, which is live from the BBC. So have a look at that stuff, and the stuff that you see on there will be different to the stand-up that I'm doing on tour, except for one small routine that's a bit of crossover, but it's always fun when people know what's coming. But so if you're not sure, have a look at me. There's heaps of stuff out there online about me, and heaps of reviews of the show. This show was the best reviewed show I've had at the Edinburgh Festival. So there's bags of reviews online if you trust people with pens who write in newspapers.
And this day and age, there are so many kind of ways for you to get out there. How does that help you? You know, like, how do you feel about that? That there's so many different things. You've got TV, radio, there's all the stuff on the internet.
Yeah. Well, I do my own podcast with a comedian called Tom Allen, who you might be aware of, brilliant comic Tom. And we've been doing a podcast for the last 3 years. And it's certainly been a way that we've both helped find new audience. I think it's great that there's so much comedy that people can watch online. I get lots and lots of messages from people saying they've really enjoyed my stand-up, which is wonderful. But for me, there's nothing quite like the live experience. Being in a comedy club, surrounded by people, a group of people all laughing at the same thing, I think is just a wonderful thing, to be surrounded by people laughing. There's nothing quite like it for me. And so I love doing the telly stuff. It's always great doing panel shows, great working with, fabulous comics who I love. I'm filming a new TV show at the moment for Comedy Central about 6 comedians going around the UK in a minibus. And all of that stuff's super fun, but there's nothing quite like the live stand-up experience. And that's why I guess I'll always tour, and why I really enjoy it.
Well, it's it's a comedian's natural habitat, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's where we like to be.
Be sure to check out Suzi Ruffell's show Nocturnal, which is coming to the Brighton Komedia on Monday, the 18th of March this year. Suzi, all the best with the tour and that show in particular. And, thank you very much for coming on today.
Pleasure. I'll speak to you next year when it's the next tour. Who knows what that'll be about?
Well, no, we're all waiting to find out.
Me too. I need to start writing it soon. Thanks so much for chatting to me. Speak to you again.